Hi, this is Remembering the Past, the show where we talk about people who've died recently who've had a profound effect on our history, our society, or our culture. Tonight we're going to start out with Paul Prudhomme, who died recently at the age of 75. Chef Paul was the renowned cook who popularized Cajun food in America. He was also a prolific author on cooking and the proprietor of K. Paul's Louisiana Kitchen, which is one of the great restaurants in the United States located in the French Quarter in New Orleans. Paul Prudhomme, who was also a Dame DeLuise doppelganger, instituted a lot of novel Louisiana techniques in his cooking, including blackening his fish and his meats. And this was soon copied by other chefs, and people traveled all over the United States to taste his fares in New Orleans. Liz Reyes did an interview with Paul Prudhomme a couple of years ago that tells all about him.
One of the great things about New Orleans is that this is a home to many of the world's greatest chefs. And if you're lucky, you'll run into them when you eat at one of these great places like K. Paul's Louisiana's Kitchen. Sizzling down-home Cajun cooking with signature dishes like blackened steak and blackened redfish, prepared with the freshest ingredients and natural spices. That's what you'll find at K. Paul's restaurant in the historic French Quarter.
I just think it's the best thing you can do for a job is to affect another human being.
69-year-old celebrity chef Paul Prudhomme is a culinary genius behind K. Paul's restaurant. The Louisiana native is a chef who propelled Cajun cuisine to the international scene. He's also the inventor of the now famous hot skillet technique of blackening meats with natural spices, a technique he says only works with fresh foods.
I've preached it so many times. You cannot do blackening from frozen food. It just don't work. I mean, it has an awful taste to it. If you have fresh food, blackening is incredible. And if you have the right seasoning blends together, it's really wonderful. A lot of people do it with frozen food, and it's okay. I don't have any problem with it. It just sort of breaks my heart that they're not getting all the flavors.
At his restaurant, an open kitchen allows diners to see how their meals are prepared. And if he's down, they'll also get a chance to meet and talk with him.
I just want to do food that's fresh and really turns people on.
Chef Paul is a multi-award-winning chef who's cooked for VIPs around the world. The best-selling author and television personality says he first learned about cooking from his mother, growing up in a small Cajun town in Opelousas, Louisiana. He was the youngest of 13 kids, and when the last girl left home, it was his turn to help out around age 6.
She would put me in the wood box, and so I could see in the wood stove. And she would say to me, when this looks like or it smells like, come get me. And she was out washing on a scrub board and, doing the chores that she had to do, cooking, outside. And so I would run out and say, it's at that point. That was the beginning of understanding food and understanding the taste of it, because she'd come in and she'd add whatever it was or do whatever it was to get it to the next stage. And she was a great, great cook.
He was also in his hometown where he learned the value of always cooking with fresh, natural ingredients.
Herbs and spices in the country. We would go out in the swamps and get, my dad knew where to get them and my brothers knew where to get them. And we would grow things that would make the food better.
He became one of America's best-known chefs, working at a variety of restaurants across the country, eventually becoming a star in New Orleans, cooking at local 5-star restaurants. And here's what made him stand out. He created his own personal herbs and spices, and that has since morphed into his full-fledged Magic Seasoning Blends local manufacturing company, this 130,000 square foot plant in Elmwood. It ships spices, rubs, sauces, and marinades around the world, used on just about every type of food. And since he started it, he says he's created close to 15,000 formulas. The day we spoke to him, he just finished mixing up a new batch for a customer.
It doesn't matter where it goes as long as it makes another person happy on it.
And that's why you're Chef Paul, known around the world, because nobody else could do that. Just go in and mix that up. It's all those years of experience and the creativity and the genius of what you do.
It's something that you can't identify. I don't know why I picked it.
It's that je ne sais quoi.
It's simple.
No doubt, Chef Paul is a Louisiana treasure, a star among stars, given the love he has for his craft and the hope he has for others following in his footsteps.
If I can get a young person being a professional cook and understands what I do and he or she wants to do it, that's the greatest reward I can have. You know, there's no other, I mean, there really isn't. If they just understand what I have always understood about food, if I can get them to do that, it's just wonderful.
We're going to move on now to Jerry Parr, who died recently at the age of 85. He was the Maine Secret Service agent on March 30th, 1981, when Ronald Reagan was shot in Washington. He made the decision to take him to the hospital and thereby saved his life. We talked about the Reagan assassination when we did the James Brady podcast, and here's Jerry Parr telling what happened that day.
My dad and I used to go to a lot of movies because he was out of work. It was during the Great Depression. We would go to the Tower Theater, which was several blocks away. We had to walk. And we saw a movie called The Code of the Secret Service. And the actor in that, the main actor, but played a part of an agent named Brass Bancroft, was Ronald Reagan. With the president, there was more press, more crowds, more threats, more people on the outside, more people hollering, more demonstrators. Well, when he was about probably 6 or 7 feet from the car, I heard these shots. I sort of knew what they were, and I've been waiting for them all of my career in a way. That's what every agent waits for, is that. And so since we were only about 6, 7 feet from that car and the door was already open, the most natural thing to do is to get his head down and push him real hard into the car. And I went in on top of him, and Ray Shattuck, my shift leader, threw our feet in and slammed the door shut. And as soon as that was shut, I yelled to Drew Unruh, take off as fast as he could. So he just pressed on the accelerator with nobody in the right front, except the driver and the president and me in the back seat. Somehow, intuitively, I just looked out the back window as we were moving. I saw 3 bodies on the sidewalk. I thought, we're clear. But then he started spitting up blood about DuPont Circle underneath him. And so I looked at it and I said, I'm taking you to the hospital. He looked pretty bad. I asked God to let him live. Lord, let him live. I got right over his face and said that. I don't think he heard me, but his eyes were open. I don't think he heard me. It was such a strange thing that me seeing his image on a film when I was 9 years old and then ended up helping save his life.
Reagan's code name was Rawhide, and here's the initial tape from the limousine to the White House indicating that it appeared he was okay.
Rawhide is okay. Follow up. Rawhide is okay. You want to go to the hospital, back to the White House. We're going to Crown. Back to the White House. Back to the White House. Rawhide is okay.
And here's the tape a minute later when Jerry Parr notices him bleeding under DuPont Circle.
Roger, we want to go to the emergency room of George Washington. Go to George Washington fast. Roger.
I'll never forget March 30th, 1981, when Jerry Parr, a Secret Service agent in charge of the presidential detail, faced the ultimate test of his career and passed with flying colors. To me, Jerry Parr will always be a hero, not just because of what he did, but because of who he is.
Well, we're going to move on to our feature tonight, Smith Brothers Cough Drops, the iconic cough drop brand, which will cease production after 168 years. There was a time when everyone knew Smith Brothers Cough Drops, but the factory located on the south side of Chicago is closing down in a couple of weeks. Here's the history of the company from the Smith Brothers website, which started in 1847 when James Smith emigrated to the United States. It all started on one particularly cold, bitter winter's day in 1852 in the windswept Hudson Valley. Sly Hawkins, a traveling peddler, walked into the James Smith & Sons sweet shop with his secret formula for cough relief. William and Andrew were sons of James Smith, who moved to Poughkeepsie from St. Armand, Quebec in 1847 to establish a restaurant. Though James was a fine carpenter by trade, he was an even better candy maker and businessman. The story of the birth of the first cough drop is a good example. As the story goes, a journeyman stopped at the Smith restaurant and gave James the formula for a delicious and effective cough candy. James saw a need for such a product in the cold, windswept Hudson Valley and immediately mixed up a batch on his kitchen stove. The drops were a quick success and demand for the cough candy grew fast up and down the river. Only a few years later, in 1852, the firm's first advertisement appeared in the Poughkeepsie paper, inviting all afflicted with hoarseness, cough, or colds to test it. Young William and Andrew were active in the new business from the start. They helped mix the family's secret formula in their father's kitchen and busily sold the product in the streets of Poughkeepsie. The two boys inherited the fast-growing business on their father's death in 1866, and the company officially became known as Smith Brothers. As sales grew throughout the Hudson Valley, the success was met with a flurry of imitators. Schmidt Brothers, Smythe Sisters, and even other Smith Brothers appeared with imitative products. The real Smith Brothers, by this time having long flowing beards, decided to place their own picture on their product packaging, which consisted of glass bowls for a counter display and small envelopes into which the shopkeeper counted the Smith Brothers cough drops for each sale. The glass bowls and envelopes then in use had definite limitations. For one thing, the Smith Brothers could not be sure that only genuine Smith Brothers cough drops would be sold in envelopes which bore their pictures. So in 1872, the brothers developed a package bearing their likeness, which was filled under their personal supervision. The thin package was one of the first factory-filled packages ever developed. By chance, the word trade appeared under the picture of William and the word mark under that of Andrew. Thus it happened by a mere coincidence that the famous Smith Brothers trademark was born, and the Smith Brothers became known to generations of Americans as Trade and Mark. Andrew died in 1895, but William continued as president of Smith Brothers almost up to his death in 1913. William was succeeded by his son Arthur, under whose direction the company continued to prosper. Menthol cough drops were added in 1922, a cough syrup in 1926, and the famous Smith Brothers wild cherry flavor in 1948. Arthur had two sons, William W. II and Robert, who carried on the fourth generation of Smiths in the company. In 1964, the company was sold to a company from Chicago, and Chicago became the outlet for Smith Brothers. Here's Chicago television with the interesting fact that Smith Brothers cough drops were the first product to be known by their trademark.
In the mid-1800s until the 1970s, the biggest selling cough drops in America were Smith Brothers cough drops.
In 1852, the Smith Brothers of Poughkeepsie, New York, started to package their product, and to protect it from competitors, they had it trademarked. A lot of people thought their names were Trade and Mark.
Absolutely, they thought that. It was the first brand in America to use the words trademark in the brand logo dress. So, remarkably, it became part of the identity of the brand name.
Their real names were Andrew and William, and in those days there were really only a few types of drops.
Well, ultimately that became the problem for the Smith Brothers cough drops. There are so many proliferating today that they just couldn't compete. They went into bankruptcy a couple years ago. Some sharp businessmen tried to revive the company, but ultimately the creditors gave up on it. As I said, Smith Brothers cough drops used to be iconic, and they had some pretty neat commercials too. Here's one of the early television commercials for Smith Brothers cough drops.
Ah, a day in the woods. Let's see what our friend, the sportsman, is aiming at. Wow, loaded for bear. Easy on the trigger. Oh, lucky break for the bear. Tough luck for the hunter. He coughed and missed. But here come the Smith Brothers with their delicious wild cherry cough drops. What a flavor-packed way to relieve coughs due to colds. Take one anytime. They treat your taste while they treat your cough. Smith Brothers Wild Cherry Cough Drops are rich with tangy wild cherry flavor. Bet a cough won't spoil our straight shooter's aim this time.
We love those cough drops. Smith Brothers cough drops. We love those Smith Brothers Wild Cherry cough drops.
They're tantalizing good. Sold everywhere.
Now, new Thrifty Freeze at your favorite supermarket.
My man Frank Zappa even did a weird sort of thing for Smith Brothers cough drops.
You'll hurt your throat. Stop it.
But I wouldn't need a cough drop if people didn't shove things down my throat.
Well, I'm going to close on that note. I want to thank my producer and IT genius, Sid Tepps. And that Frank Zappa commercial was no coincidence. We have some symmetry here. Because Gail Zappa, Frank's widow, died recently at the age of 70. She was the keeper of his legacy. Well, because Gail's gone, I'm going to help her with Frank's legacy and close tonight with the first Frank Zappa song I ever heard. Frank was a funny guy, also a very talented guy, and my camp counselor turned me on to this. This is You're Probably Wondering Why I'm Here from his 1966 album Freak Out. Dig that crazy kazoo.
You're probably wondering why I'm here, and so am I, so am I. You're probably wondering why
difference to you?